Now I know why. They blocked that off. Jayo.
Oh, what's up everyone? So I wanted to make a video on the top 15 lifting myths. This is by no means all of the lifting myths. I could easily go to 100, if not 1,000. Honestly, there are so many just pieces of BS floating around the fitness industry. I don't know why everyone doesn't have pink eye just from all that crap floating around. So the first one is going to be, it's 80% diet. So I hear this quite a bit. People say, you know, if you want to change your body, it's just 80% diet. It's only 20% of what you do in the gym. That is bullshit. That is BS. Should I swear? Is that a YouTube? Is that a thing? Should I censor myself? Fuck it. It is not 80% diet, okay? You cannot separate diet and training. The diet supports the training, not the other way around. Think about it this way. If you don't train at all and you just have a perfect diet, are you going to gain muscle? No, okay? Unless you're going through puberty or something, no, you will not gain any muscle if you don't progressively overload in the gym, okay? So training, it's not 100%, because if you only train but you don't get enough protein, let's say you're just not eating any food at all, you're not going to grow, okay? So it's really impossible to give a percentage. You know, is it 80% training? Is it 50% training? And honestly, this is just another example of people liking simplifications. They like thinking, oh, it's 80% this or 44% this. No, okay? This is not something that you can break down into numbers. However, if you're a numbers person, I would say that in terms of muscle growth, training is going to be much more important than diet. So maybe it's like 60% or 80% training. I don't know what they're doing outside. There's just so much random noise in China. I mean, you getting this? You picking this up? Power tools in a community. I mean, I've legit had like people hammering in the floor above me for like 5 hours straight, and I couldn't even do a voiceover. I had to leave and do a voiceover because someone was just doing construction the whole day.
Seriously, what the fuck? Is this necessary? Is this necessary? Come on, bro. Come on, bro. Do you even lift? Do you even lift? Punk.
Alright, I'm just gonna wait till these assholes stop deforesting my community. Alright, I'm back. They went to go sleep, I think, so. Alright, number 2 is gonna be, I don't want to get too bulky. And I think this comes from people who see people who lift weights and they think of bodybuilders. They think of just people who are on massive amounts of steroids and they get huge. That is not going to be the case, okay? Unless you have amazing genetics, work out really hard for a long period of time, and take steroids, okay? Most people do not need to worry about getting too bulky. If you want that sort of lean, athletic look, you should lift, okay? I would say in 99% of circumstances. Women are typically the ones who say this. They say, I don't want to get too bulky, I don't want to get too jacked. Again, this is that steroid image of that Mrs. Olympia kind of thing. That is not going to happen without steroids. I would say most women who lift, they look amazing. They look really good. Objectively, I would say better than people who just do cardio, you know, in terms of just attractiveness. On the other hand, you have some people who say, I need steroids to grow. And maybe they've been lifting a year or 2 years or even less, and then they start asking me questions about steroids. First of all, I've never taken steroids, so I don't really know that much about them. I've read a little bit. I couldn't like put together a cycle at all. Like if you said, you know, gun to my head, put together a cycle that makes sense, I would just have no idea. I wouldn't even know like where to start. So that's just something that I don't really have a lot of knowledge about. But I do think that you don't need steroids to get to most people's goals. If you want to win the Mr. Olympia, if you want to compete in the Mr. Olympia, if you want to win non-natural shows that are not specifically natural, yeah, you're going to have to take them. But just to develop a lean, aesthetic, good-looking physique, absolutely you do not need steroids. Another thing I see is BroSplits, so training one muscle group per day. Now this can work. This can actually, have you make progress, but it won't be optimal for the vast majority of people. Again, this goes back to steroids, because a lot of professional bodybuilders, they do this BroSplit because they have to give their joints longer to recover because they are lifting stupid amounts of weight. Plus, they are always growing because of these, compounds that they're using, so they don't really need to stimulate the muscle as often because they are always growing. If you're natural, that's not the case. We don't have that luxury, and so we have to train more often. Another myth that I hear is that you need to be sore to grow. You don't necessarily need to be sore to grow. Muscle damage is actually not as correlated with muscle growth as we used to think. It's actually not as necessary. What is necessary is progressive tension overload, which might correlate with muscle damage. If you're lifting hard and heavy, yeah, you're going to incur some muscle damage, which might lead to soreness. But the soreness is not what actually causes growth.
They've legit been at this for like half an hour. What a job.
Another one I hear is that lifting is bad for your joints. Guess what? Lower back pain is the #1 cause of missed work in America. Do you think that's from deadlifting? Do you think most people are getting bad backs from deadlifting? No. I've never had a back issue, ever. And I've deadlifted 5 million kilos or more in my lifetime over the past 5 or 6 years. 5 million kilos, and I've never had any issues. Lifting incorrectly can be bad for your joints. If you use poor technique, if you're too aggressive with the loading, yeah, you can mess yourself up. But it is actually good for your joints if you do it correctly. I have had people who had back pain, and I had them deadlift, and it solved their issues. They had pain before, they deadlifted, and then they were fine. So movement can hurt, but movement can also heal. Another one I hear is that machines are safer and better. Some cases, yes. In other cases, no. If a machine locks you into a certain range of motion, a certain path, let's say you're doing an overhead shoulder press using a machine, that could actually mess up your rotator cuff. A lot of machines, they aren't really biomechanically very good. And, everyone is a little bit different. Everyone can bench press because you can control where exactly the bar moves. It's a free weight movement, and so it's under your control. However, on something like maybe a leg press or some other type of machine like a chest press, you don't necessarily control where it goes. The machine is moving in a fixed path. If this path is at like an awkward angle, you can get injured. So I think it's a myth that machines are safer and better. They're a tool. Try them, see if you like them, but don't automatically assume that they're better. Another example is a Smith machine. Using a Smith machine on a bench press, it actually makes it a little bit more dangerous in some ways, just because you can't tip the weights to the side, you can't roll the barbell off of you, and so if you end up with the barbell on your chest and you can't get it off, what are you going to do? I mean, you're pretty much screwed. Same for the Smith machine squat. If it's a free weight squat, you can dump the barbell backwards. On a Smith machine, you just can't do that. It's in a fixed position, and you can really, really mess yourself up. Another myth is muscle turns to fat if you stop lifting. Okay? Muscle is muscle, fat is fat. They are two completely different tissues. They might both be weight, they might both be mass. If you stop lifting, you might lose muscle and gain fat, but it's not really the muscle turning into fat. It's you losing muscle and you gaining fat from overeating, okay? So your body will respond to various stimuluses in order to optimize survival. Survival and mating, that's about all the body cares about. And usually it's in that order, unless you're drunk, in which case mating comes first. So if you stop lifting, you're going to lose muscle. And if you keep eating a lot, that excess energy, it won't go to muscle. It'll go to fat. This isn't really the muscle turning into fat. It's a completely different process. Another is that lifting weights decreases flexibility. Now, this is true in some cases. You can get muscle bound. For example, I can't itch certain parts of my back. If I get an itch in like the very middle of my back, that's going to be annoying. I'm going to have to just deal with it. But this isn't necessarily because I'm too big. This is just because I don't really practice that range of motion. If you keep that range of motion, then you're going to keep it. You know, if you do it on a regular basis, you'll be able to do it. So I can still get down into a very deep squat because I do it on a regular basis. Whereas untrained people, often they cannot get into a full squat. They have mobility issues because they sit in chairs the entire day and they don't actually squat into that deep position. So lifting can actually increase your flexibility if you use a full range of motion. If you don't use a full range of motion, yes, potentially it could tighten you up. It could decrease your flexibility. But this is going to be on a case-by-case basis. Another one that I see is that you need lighter weights to tone. Most people don't even think about what the word tone means. What it means is basically you have some muscle, maybe a lot of muscle, maybe a little muscle, but you have some muscle, and you have a lower body fat percentage. So maybe you used to be 20% body fat, and now you're 15% body fat, and all of a sudden you can see the muscles because you have less fat, and you're toned. Now you've toned. You're like a printer. You've got your toner. You're all set up. The thing is, that is diet, okay? If you want to reduce your body fat percentage, that is going to be diet. And if you use lighter weights and you don't really push it as hard because you're trying to tone, you're doing more volume, you might actually lose muscle. And so you'll look worse after you try to tone, okay? So the solution is going to be just to focus on the diet side of things, reduce your calorie intake, but keep lifting as heavy as possible. Now, you might lose some strength. If you're going down to like 7%, 8%, even anywhere below 10% for a guy, or below maybe 18% for a woman, you're going to lose muscle. You're going to lose strength. It's what's going to happen. And I think this is why some people choose to use plates that are less than real, just because they lose a lot of strength, but they want to appear to be strong. But if you're natural, that's just part of what being very, very lean is. But you should still try to lift as heavy as possible to maintain that muscle mass that you built. So either lift heavy or lift close to failure, as you see here. Otherwise, you're probably going to lose muscle during that dieting process. Another myth that I see all the time is that it's going to take months to see results. Now, I don't know who came up with this myth, but it is BS. I guess maybe some just crappy trainer said, well, it's going to take you a few months to see any kind of results. You need 8 weeks to see any kind of progress. No! Okay? You should see progress within a couple weeks. If not, maybe even sooner. I don't care about your genetics, about anything else. You should see pretty rapid progress, especially if you are trying to lose fat. If you don't see results visually within a month, something's wrong, okay? Unless you are like very, very overweight, like if you're 50% body fat, and I've worked with people who are that high, it's going to be harder to see results just because the leaner you are, the more apparent and the more visible and the more transparent your physique is. So for example, if I lose 2 kilos, I can see it. I look a little bit sharper, my abs are a little bit clearer, I have a little bit more vascularity, etc. But if you're 50% body fat, you can't really see any of that. Still, you should see some progress, I think, and certainly before a few months. If anyone sells you that and they say like, well, you're going to see progress in maybe like 6 months, don't, be their client, because that is a huge cop-out, and you should see results a lot faster than that. Another huge myth that I see is thinking that you need a ton of exercise selection. You need a ton of variety in the movements that you are doing. And this is just not the case at all. I've seen people who are very successful on a very minimalistic style of programming. They might choose like one push movement, one press movement, one pull, one row, one hinge, one squat, and they just get better at those movements. They just get stronger at those 6 different movements, or maybe 10 different movements. And I made a video on this. It said how to find your Big 10. I'll link it in the description. And honestly, find the movements that work for you. My book has over 100 different exercises, all fully explained, detailed, I'm going to try not to be too salesman-y, but it's awesome. It's awesome. It's so good. It's so good. It has 5 stars for a reason. Get it. It's so good. I'm getting excited about my book because it's so good. Anyway, calm down, calm down. But I only have that many exercises because everyone is different. Once you find the movements that are good for you, after that point, you don't need a lot of variety. So find the movements that you like. You don't need 15 different squat movements. You know, maybe 2, 3, or 4. And then you can choose those, master them, get really good at them, and just keep progressing on those for your entire training career.
They're almost there. They're almost there. It's so close. They've come so far. Who's gonna win? Stay tuned.
And honestly, this is a lot of channels. A lot of channels are just espousing this endless exercise stream where they're pumping out more and more creative exercises, which occasionally work, but often are just complete dog shit. And honestly, people love it. They eat it up without really thinking and realizing that these exercises are crap. I mean, if someone tells you this exercise works the upper maximus rectus dorsimus through a partial flexion moment arm with an active passive tendon, bending, stretch, reflex through a retention of the upper modulation Golgi tendon, organ orgasm, supramaximal, substandard, in stabilization, influx, habitual, reflux, function, sublex, sublateral, science, yes, science. They're full of shit. The ability to explain something simply, clearly, and understandably is something all coaches should strive for. All right, the next one is going to be protein. So I typically hear 1 gram per pound thrown out, and this is just not what the science, what the studies, actual studies, science, people studying this stuff for a job, for a career, it's what they do. Not the bro scientists who, are on steroids. This actually also goes back to steroids. A lot of these do. Just because if you're on steroids, you're going to be able to build muscle faster and you will need more protein. If you're natural, past your newbie gains, you're going to be gaining like a few kilos per year of muscle. So if you gain, let's say 2 kilos per year, that's just a few grams per day. And so you simply just don't need that much protein. You cannot use that much protein. So this myth came from steroid users and abusers, but also those who are selling supplements. It's quite easy to get to what I recommend. I recommend about 1.6 grams per kilo or 0.7 grams per pound. That is not too challenging to get to. If you're a vegan, if you're vegetarian, it might be a little bit tough and you might want to supplement. But if you're eating meat a few times per day, or any other animal-based product, that shouldn't be too hard to get to. You might also still want to supplement, but you can do it. It's doable. But 2 grams per pound, that is going to be really, really tough. That's a lot of chicken breast. And if you're not eating a very lean meat, like chicken breast or something like egg whites, it's going to be almost impossible to get that much protein without a lot of excess fat or carbs. And so if you're eating 2 grams per pound, it's going to be lean, or you're going to have to supplement. Supplement companies know this, and so that's why they recommend huge protein numbers. It's just to move more product. Another myth that I see is prehab. Now, a lot of channels, I think you know who I'm talking about. I'm not going to be a dick anymore. They give you so many prehab exercises that you don't actually have time for your workout. You warm up for 30, 40, 45 minutes, and then you got to go back to work. Well, that's not really effective. That's not really logical. If you have a specific issue, then you should address that issue. But I think there are very few movements that you should do before you discover that issue. So, do your back extensions for your lower back. Do face pulls for your shoulders. Do single leg movement for your glute medius. Apart from that, there's really not that much that you should be doing. These channels that are pumping out 5 different prehab exercises per week, they're really doing people a disservice. Think about it. You get injured for a specific reason. You have a specific weakness. If you don't have that specific weakness, because you're already fine, you don't need to do that movement. It is just a waste of time and possibly a waste of money as well.
And it looks like middle guy 1 takes it with Beekeeper in second. And maybe Orange Bro in third. And then screw the rest of you.
The last one is going to be, I need a personal trainer. Now you might be surprised at this because I am a coach. I am an online personal trainer. But you might not necessarily need one. I have never had a personal trainer and I've been fine. If you are willing to put in a lot of time learning, which can be very difficult and it can take years, then you might not need a personal trainer. There are plenty of people who have never had a personal trainer and they've been fine. So you might not need one. On the other hand, if you want to exchange your money for expertise, which is how things work in a capitalistic society that we generally live in, then it might make sense. But it is typically not necessary. There's so much information online, on the web, on YouTube, on Instagram, everywhere, that you can find whatever you need. What becomes difficult is sorting through the myths, sorting through the just misinformation, the disinformation, the bad information.
You lazy
So a personal trainer can be a good investment, but it is not 100% necessary for all people, for sure. All right, if you agree or disagree, let me know in the comments down below. If you're angry with me, maybe you're a protein salesman or a prehab specialist. Make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel if for some weird reason you're not already subscribed. That would be strange. And I will see you next time. Peace.